Welcome to Simplified UPSC by PPP, where we listen, learn, and grow together. Detailed lecture notes in English and Hindi, plus practice questions for prelims and mains, only on our Telegram channel. Link in description. Like and subscribe for more.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We're here again to really dig into the source material and build up that solid understanding for you.
That's the plan.
Today, we are tackling something pretty big, India's Strategic Conservation Playbook. You know, when you look at wildlife protection, especially at that scale, the real success stories often come down to these major species-focused projects.
Absolutely. And our mission today isn't just like listing them off.
No.
We want to unpack the thinking behind them, the operational side, the policy stuff, basically the precise details that make them tick, or sometimes maybe not tick as well.
Exactly. It's about getting that conceptual clarity, but backing it up with the hard facts.
Right. So the launch years, who's actually in charge? The administration. What were the objectives, both ecological and maybe cultural, and the key strategies they used? You know, was it a ban? Was it moving animals around? Community involvement?
Yeah, the whole toolkit.
We're basically analyzing the methods India uses for its most threatened wildlife. And I think we have to start with the absolute giant, the flagship, Project Tiger.
Project Tiger. It really feels like more than just another program, doesn't it? It's almost the blueprint for how large-scale conservation started in India.
It really set the stage. Launched way back 1973.
73. Wow.
Yeah, and it's still the cornerstone for protecting the Bengal tiger, Panthera tigris. It's shaped India's whole protected area network for, what, half a century now.
Incredible. But let's nail down the administration first. Who runs the show now?
Okay, so the power behind it now is the National Tiger Conservation Authority, the NTCA.
NTCA. Got it.
But here's a key detail. The NTCA wasn't there from the start in 73.
Oh, okay.
It was established much later. It came into being as a statutory authority because of the 2006 Amendment Act. That was a huge shift.
Right. So why? Why the change in 2006? What wasn't working before then?
Well, before 2006, Project Tiger was managed directly by the Ministry of Environment and Forests.
Okay.
Which sounds fine, but in practice, it often meant it didn't have enough, let's say, high-level political clout or the power to really coordinate across states effectively.
I see. Needed more independence.
Exactly. The NTCA was created to give it that. Being a statutory authority means it has real legal teeth.
Like what kind of teeth?
Things like stronger powers for prosecuting forest offenses, more autonomy to actually help state governments get things done on the ground, and crucially, the ability to manage dedicated long-term funding.
Okay, so it wasn't just a name change. It fundamentally upgraded the whole thing from just a government scheme to a legally backed conservation structure.
Precisely, a proper architecture.
And looking back at those original 1973 objectives, you see this really interesting dual focus. It wasn't just about the animals.
Yeah, it was broader.
The first objective was clearly about the scientific and ecological value, right?
Yeah.
Ensuring a viable tiger population because it's important ecologically and scientifically.
Yes, and we really need to unpack that term keystone species.
Right.
The sources are clear. Top predators like tigers are keystone species. What that means is if you save the tiger, you basically have to save its entire ecosystem.
Because everything is connected.
Everything.
Yeah.
If the tigers are doing well, it implies the prey animals, the deer, the wild pigs are thriving.
Which means the vegetation they eat is healthy.
And the water sources are good, the forest cover is intact, it all links up.
So a healthy tiger count is like the ultimate ecological report card.
Pretty much.
But then there was that second objective, which I think was just as critical for its success. The cultural and aesthetic value.
Mm-hmm.
Preserving these important biological areas as a national heritage. For people, for education, for enjoyment.
And that's the masterstroke, connecting conservation directly to national identity, to social and cultural values. That secures much broader support, public and political.
So it wasn't just scientists saying, save the trees. It was framed as, this is part of who we are.
Exactly. It meant the project wasn't just about fencing off land. It was about defining what the nation values. And look at the growth. It started with just 9 reserves.
Only 9.
Only 9 initially. But it expanded massively. The source mentions it grew to 42 reserves across 17 states.
Wow. That scale of land commitment and keeping the political will going for decades, that's pretty staggering.
It really is.
Okay, so from the tiger, the solitary predator needing large, secure zones, let's switch gears completely. Let's talk about a species that needs huge connected landscapes and throws up totally different challenges. the elephant.
Right. Project Elephant, launched in 1992.
1992.
And yes, completely different set of problems. Asian elephants aren't solitary like tigers. They're highly social. They roam over vast areas.
So just protecting isolated parks isn't enough.
Not nearly enough.
Yeah.
You have to think about their movement, their mobility. That's why the three main objectives laid out back in 92 were so focused on the landscape.
Okay, what were they?
1, the basic protection of elephants themselves. Pretty straightforward.
Sure.
2, the comprehensive management of their habitats and elephant corridors. That corridor part is key.
We'll come back to that. And the third?
3, directly tackling the growing and very tricky issue of human-elephant conflict, or HEC.
HEC. Yeah, the moment you mention corridors, you're talking about areas where elephants and people are likely to meet, right?
Inevitably.
Our sources flag land use transformation as a big driver of human-wildlife conflict in general. How does that specifically impact elephants?
Well, think about it. As villages expand, farms push into forest areas. Roads and railways cut across landscapes.
The elephants' traditional routes get blocked or squeezed.
Exactly. Those corridors, vital for moving between feeding grounds, for seasonal migration, even for finding mates and maintaining genetic diversity, they get fractured.
And when they're forced onto new paths or through settlements,
Conflict is almost guaranteed.
Yeah.
Crops get raided, property damaged. Sometimes, tragically, people get hurt or killed, and elephants too.
so the strategy has to go beyond just park boundaries.
Right.
It needs specific ways to manage that conflict.
Absolutely. Things like community monitoring groups to track elephant movements near villages, or using deterrents, maybe special fences, sometimes chili ropes or beehive fences, in those critical bottleneck areas where conflict is most likely. Corridor management is central.
And this isn't just an Indian problem. Elephants cross borders. There's an international angle here with the MIKE program.
Yes, Mike. Monitoring of illegal killing of elephants.
We hear that acronym a lot, but technically, how does it work? What does India do with that MIKE data?
So, Mike essentially provides a standardized way for all the elephant range countries to collect and report data.
Standardized reporting, okay.
Yeah, things like how many carcasses are found, evidence of poaching, causes of death. This data gets centralized.
And that allows for comparison.
Exactly. It lets India see how its poaching levels compare internationally, but more importantly, it helps evaluate how well its own conservation efforts are working on the ground.
So if poaching suddenly spikes in one region,
The Mike data can flag that.
Mhm.
It helps managers adapt their strategies, maybe deploy more patrols, change tactics based on near real-time information. It's a tool for adaptive management.
very useful. Okay, let's pivot again. From these huge landscape animals to something completely different. A conservation crisis driven by a single chemical. Vulture conservation.
Ah, yes. A really stark environmental disaster story, but also a story with a clear solution eventually.
What was the core problem? The population crash was catastrophic, right?
Absolutely devastating. Several vulture species just plummeted across South Asia.
Yeah.
And the cause was pinpointed to one thing, the veterinary drug Diclofenac.
Diclofenac, used on livestock,
Widely used, yeah. It's an anti-inflammatory drug given to cattle. Harmless to the cows.
but lethal to the vultures that fed on the carcasses.
Fatally toxic. When vultures scavenged on livestock treated with Diclofenac shortly before death, the drug remained in the tissues.
And this is a classic case of bioaccumulation, isn't it? Our source material talks about how non-degradable pollutants move up the food chain.
Exactly, like DDT or other chlorinated hydrocarbons mentioned in the texts. The pollutant concentrates at higher trophic levels. In this case, Diclofenac built up in the vultures.
What did it actually do to them, physiologically?
It caused rapid and severe kidney failure. Their systems couldn't break it down. It led to a condition called visceral gout, basically, urate crystals coating their internal organs. Death was quick.
Horrifying. A silent killer across the subcontinent.
It was just a cascading collapse.
So the response had to be just as targeted. The Action Plan for Vulture Conservation, AKVC. What were the key moves?
It was essentially a two-pronged strategy. First, a biological safety net, meaning establishing captive breeding centers. This was an ex-situ measure, breeding them outside their natural environment to create a safe reservoir population. Kind of an insurance policy in case the wild population's completely winked out.
Smart, a backup.
A vital backup. And second, the big policy intervention, banning the veterinary use of Diclofenac nationwide.
Cleaning up the environment by removing the poison.
Precisely. Stop the source of the problem.
Now, banning a common cheap drug sounds simple on paper, but across India's vast rural areas with so many livestock owners relying on it, How hard was that to actually enforce?
Oh, it was a massive challenge.
Good.
Logistically and politically.
Good.
It required coordination between the central drug authorities, state vet departments, local officials, even educating farmers and vets.
Was there a safe alternative drug they could push?
Yes, crucially there was. Another drug called meloxicam was identified as being safe for vultures. So a big part of the effort was promoting meloxicam as the replacement.
So education and providing alternatives were key to making the ban stick.
Absolutely. It wasn't overnight, but the combination of the ban, backed by clear scientific evidence, and the promotion of alternatives was incredibly effective in turning the tide. It really proves that sometimes policy action is just as critical as habitat work.
Okay, let's move into initiatives that required more direct intervention, crisis management, where just protecting an area isn't enough. You actually have to move animals or manage populations very intensely, like the Indian Rhino Vision IRV 2020.
IRV 2020, yeah, that was a very ambitious project with a very clear quantitative goal.
What was the target?
The main aim was to get to a wild population of 3,000 greater one-horned rhinos.
3,000? That's specific.
Very specific. And not just 3,000 anywhere, but spread across at least 7 protected areas in Assam, all by the year 2020.
Why that focus on spreading them out? And why the urgency? What were the big threats?
Well, the greater one-horned rhino is listed as vulnerable. The threats are serious. First, habitat loss. They need very specific types of grassland, riverine, and alluvial grasslands, which are under pressure.
Okay.
And second, relentless poaching for their horns. The demand, especially for traditional medicine in places like China, just doesn't seem to go away.
So even if the numbers were okay overall, having them all packed into 1 or 2 parks, like Kaziranga, was risky.
Extremely risky.
Yeah.
Think about it. A single disease outbreak, a major flood, or a concentrated poaching effort could wipe out a huge chunk of the population. Yeah. Diversification was key.
Spreading the risk. Makes sense. So what was the core strategy to achieve that spread?
The main tool was translocation.
Yeah.
Actively moving rhinos.
Taking them from where they were doing well.
Exactly. From the high-density parks where they were sort of overcrowded, like Pobatora Wildlife Sanctuary and obviously Kaziranga National Park.
And moving them where?
Moving them to other areas within Assam where rhinos used to live, but the populations were very low, or even locally extinct. Manas National Park was a key recipient site.
Translocation sounds simple, catch, move, release.
Yeah.
But moving a 2-ton rhino, that can't be easy. What are the practical hurdles?
Oh, it's incredibly complex and high risk. You need highly skilled vets for safe capture and tranquilization.
Right.
The logistics and cost of transport are huge. Specialized trucks, sometimes helicopters, security convoys.
And you can't just drop them off and hope for the best, presumably.
No way. They often need a period of acclimatization in temporary enclosures called bomas in the new site.
Okay.
And then intensive post-release monitoring is critical, tracking them, seeing if they're adapting, surviving, finding food, avoiding conflict. It requires a huge collaborative effort.
Who was involved? Government agencies.
Yes, the Assam Forest Department was central, but it was very much a partnership. It involved key conservation NGOs, rhino experts, local communities near the release sites. It highlights that this kind of active management needs everyone working together.
A fantastic example of proactive conservation. Let's shift focus now to another species where vulnerability is all about geography. Project Hangul.
Ah, the Kashmir stag. Project Hangul started even earlier, back in 1970.
So one of the oldest specific projects.
Yes, focused entirely on the Kashmir stag, or Hangul, scientific name Cervicelaphus hanglu. It's actually a subspecies of red deer.
And what makes its conservation so unique?
Its incredibly restricted range, extreme localization.
The ultimate all eggs in one basket scenario.
Pretty much. Conservation efforts are overwhelmingly concentrated in just one place. Bachigam National Park in Jammu and Kashmir.
Bachigam, so if anything goes wrong there.
It threatens the entire global population. That's the core strategic challenge. This single-site focus means the project has to be hyper-aware of any local pressures.
What kind of pressures historically? Poaching.
Poaching has been a factor, yes, but also significant habitat degradation within Bachigam and surrounding areas. Things like competition for grazing with domestic livestock,
Right.
and general human disturbance, especially in the higher valleys they use in summer and the lower areas they move to in winter.
So the urgency comes from protecting this last remnant population in its very specific, beautiful, but fragile habitat.
Exactly. These dense riverine forests, high valleys, the mountains of the Kashmir Valley, it's a unique ecosystem, and the Hangul is uniquely adapted to it and found nowhere else. Preventing its extinction requires intensive focus on that one location.
Okay, we've covered tigers, elephants, rhinos, vultures, deer. Let's broaden out again. Moving from the high Himalayas down to the rivers and coasts now. There are projects showing the sheer diversity of India's conservation efforts. Let's start with crocodiles.
Right. The Indian Crocodile Conservation Project, this one also dates back quite a way, launched in 1975.
75. And it wasn't just one type of crocodile, was it?
No, it covered 3 native species. The gharial, which is critically endangered with that long, thin snout.
Okay.
The mugger, or marsh crocodile, which is more widespread.
Right.
And the massive saltwater crocodile, found in coastal areas and estuaries.
3 different species, likely facing different threats. What was the main strategy here? It sounds like it would need to be pretty hands-on.
Extremely hands-on. The core strategy was very labor-intensive. Captive breeding, followed by releasing the young back into the wild.
The rear and release technique.
That's the one. Basically, collect eggs from the wild, hatch them under controlled, safe conditions, raise the young crocodiles until they're large enough to have a better chance of survival.
And release them back into suitable river habitat.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was particularly crucial for the gharial, whose populations had crashed dramatically due to habitat changes, fishing nets, dams, things like that.
So this is a prime example of ex-situ conservation, right? Taking them out of the wild to save them.
Classic ex-situ.
Why was this intensive out-of-habitat approach needed for crocs when, say, Project Elephant focuses more on protecting the habitat in situ?
Well, for species like the gharial, the wild populations were just so low, so fragmented, and the threats in their natural river habitats, like getting caught in fishing gear or their nesting sandbanks being destroyed, were so immediate and severe.
So breeding them in safety was the only quick way to boost numbers.
It was seen as the only way to prevent complete extinction at the time. It's an emergency intervention designed to build the population back up while, hopefully, efforts are also made to restore and protect their natural river homes so they could eventually breed successfully on their own again.
A critical stopgap measure then. Okay, following the rivers out to the ocean, let's talk about the sea turtle project. Sea turtles migrate huge distances, so this must have an international angle.
It absolutely does. Conservation can't stop at the coastline for these animals. The project involves collaboration with international bodies. The source mentions the UNDP, United Nations Development Program, specifically.
Makes sense. Which species is the main focus?
The primary focus is the olive Ridley sea turtle, famous for its mass nesting events.
The Arabata.
Exactly. Huge numbers of females coming ashore simultaneously to lay eggs.
And these incredible journeys lead them to very specific nesting beaches, right? Making those beaches critically important.
Paramount. The source highlights one site in particular, Gaharmatha Marine Sanctuary in Odisha.
Gaharmatha, why is it so crucial?
It's one of the world's largest mass nesting sites for olive Ridleys. Protecting that relatively small stretch of coastline during the nesting season is absolutely vital for the survival of the species.
What are the main threats there, on the beaches and offshore?
Threats include things like illegal fishing trawlers operating too close to shore. The turtles can get caught in nets and drown.
Right.
Coastal development, artificial lighting, which disorients hatchlings, marine pollution like plastic debris. It's a whole range of pressures.
So protecting sea turtles means managing that whole coastal zone, not just the beach itself.
Definitely. It links directly to broader coastal ecosystem management, protecting mangroves, ensuring water quality, controlling damaging activities. The health of the nesting beach depends on the health of the surrounding marine and coastal environment.
Okay, one more specialized effort to cover. We're heading back up to the high mountains for Project Snow Leopard, launched much more recently, 2009.
Yes, 2009. Focusing on the snow leopard itself, of course, but also crucially, its high-altitude Himalayan habitat.
Across which states, mainly?
The key landscapes are in the higher Himalayas, so places like Jammu and Kashmir, now UTs of J&K and Ladakh, Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Sikkim, and Arunachal Pradesh.
Vast, remote, difficult terrain. What's the core innovation or focus of this particular project?
The big emphasis for Project Snow Leopard is its participatory, community-based approach.
Community involvement. We've heard that's important for elephants, too. Why is it absolutely essential, maybe even more essential, for snow leopards way up there?
Well, think about the landscape. It's remote, sparsely populated, often by nomadic or semi-nomadic herding communities. These local people are the primary inhabitants and stewards of the land.
They live alongside the snow leopards.
Exactly. And the main point of friction, the main source of human-wildlife conflict, is livestock depredation. Snow leopards killing sheep, goats, sometimes yaks.
And if a herder loses valuable livestock?
Their livelihood is directly threatened. Without any support or incentive, the natural reaction might be retaliation against the snow leopard. So, conservation simply cannot work without the active support and involvement of these communities.
So it's not just about asking for cooperation. It needs concrete solutions that benefit the locals, too.
Absolutely non-negotiable. Success relies on specific strategies that integrate people. Things like setting up livestock insurance schemes to compensate for losses.
Okay.
Promoting conservation-linked livelihoods, maybe through responsible ecotourism where revenue is shared.
Right, giving them a direct economic stake in protecting the animal.
Precisely. And involving locals in monitoring snow leopards and their prey, using their traditional knowledge. It's about building partnerships, making conservation locally relevant and sustainable. It echoes principles seen in things like joint forest management, JFM, in other parts of India.
Wow, okay. We've covered a huge range. Tigers in jungles, elephants across landscapes, rhinos moved between parks, vultures saved by a drug ban, crocodiles bred in captivity, turtles on coasts, snow leopards with communities. It's a really diverse toolkit.
It truly is. No single approach fits all.
So let's try and crystallize a key strategic difference. If we zoom out now, what's the fundamental strategic distinction between, say, Project Tiger with its core buffer approach and the captive breeding focus of the Crocodile Conservation Project?
Okay, yeah, that's a great question to hone in on the core concepts. It really boils down to the difference between in-situ and ex-situ conservation.
In-situ versus ex-situ, where the conservation happens, basically.
Exactly. Project Tiger is the quintessential in-situ conservation program. In-situ means you're protecting the species right there in its natural habitat.
Okay.
The whole strategy, the core buffer landscape approach, is designed to defend that habitat. You have strictly protected core zones where the tigers live and breed with minimal disturbance.
Right, the inner sanctum.
And then surrounding buffer zones where some regulated human activities are allowed, acting as a shock absorber and transition area, helping manage that human-wildlife interface. The focus is large-scale habitat protection.
Got it. Defend the castle. And the Crocodile Project.
The Indian Crocodile Conservation Project, especially in its initial critical phase for the gharial, relied heavily on an ex-situ strategy.
Outside the natural habitat.
Yes. The primary action, the captive breeding, happened outside the wild, in controlled environments like hatcheries, breeding centers, even zoos. Only then were the animals reintroduced back into the wild rivers, the rear and release part.
So direct intervention in the animal's life cycle, away from its home.
It's an emergency measure, really.
Now, ideally, conservation aims for in situ, doesn't it? Keeping animals wild in their natural homes seems like the gold standard.
Generally, yes. In situ is preferred because it preserves the species within its evolutionary context, maintains natural behaviors, protects genetic diversity through natural selection, and importantly, it conserves the entire ecosystem, not just the one species.
But it's not always possible. What are the trade-offs? When do you have to resort to ex-situ?
Well, in situ requires large areas of intact habitat, which might not exist anymore. It requires effective protection on the ground, which is costly, and needs constant vigilance and political will.
Right.
You turn to ex-situ approaches when the wild population is critically low, maybe below a viable level, or when there's an immediate overwhelming threat in the wild that you can't easily remove, like the Diclofenac poisoning for vultures, or maybe a catastrophic disease.
Or if the habitat is just too degraded to support breeding.
Exactly.
Oh.
Or too fragmented. Ex-situ provides a safe refuge, a way to rapidly increase numbers, manage genetics carefully to avoid inbreeding, and basically buy time while hopefully the in-situ conditions can be improved for eventual reintroduction.
So it's about having both tools in the toolbox and knowing when to use each one.
Precisely. India's experience shows that a successful national strategy needs that flexibility. The large landscape approach for species like tigers, and the intensive interventionist approach when a species like the gharial is truly on the brink. Hashtag outro and Caricho, concluding takeaways.
This has been a really comprehensive deep dive. We've gone through the mechanics of India's major species conservation efforts, the level of planning, the different strategies.
Yeah.
It's quite something.
It really shows the depth of thinking over decades.
Let's try and consolidate the key takeaways now. First, some rapid-fire facts for easy recall your prelims pointer.
Okay, let's run through them. Project Tiger, 1973 Tiger.
Got it.
Project Hangul, 1970 Kashmir Stag. Location, Dashkem,
Okay.
Indian Crocodile Conservation Project. 1975, focusing on gharial, mugger, saltwater crocodile. Strategy, Rear and release.
Right.
Project Elephant,
Mm.
1992 Elephant, key focus. Corridors and HEC.
Mm.
Project Snow Leopard, 2009 Snow Leopard, key approach, community. And vulture conservation. The key villain was the drug Diclofenac. Key solution, ban plus captive breeding.
Excellent quick summary. Now let's zoom out again for the mains insights. What does all this tell us about the broader philosophy or lessons learned from conservation in India?
Well, I think there are a few big themes that emerge.
Okay.
First, the power of the species-centric or flagship species approach. We saw how focusing on the tiger wasn't just about the tiger.
Right, the umbrella effect.
Exactly. To save the tiger, you had to save its large forest habitat. And by doing that, you automatically conserve countless other species. The prey, the plants, the insects, everything that shares that habitat. It brings ecosystem-wide benefits.
So focusing on one charismatic species can be a really effective leverage point for broader conservation.
Definitely. Second, the absolute necessity of community involvement and conflict mitigation. This came up again and again, especially for large, potentially dangerous or wide-ranging animals.
Elephants and snow leopards being prime examples.
For sure. Long-term success, especially outside strictly protected core areas, seems completely dependent on resolving that human-wildlife conflict. You need to find ways to integrate local people, give them incentives, make them partners. Participatory models aren't just nice to have, they seem essential for sustainability.
Turning potential opponents into allies.
Essentially, yes. And the third big takeaway for me is the critical role of regulatory intervention.
A vulture case.
The vulture crisis is the starkest example. It showed that massive ecological collapses can happen because of things completely outside traditional conservation, like a chemical, a policy gap.
A non-biological threat.
Exactly. And it proved that swift, decisive policy action, like the Diclofenac ban, grounded in science, can be just as powerful, if not more powerful in some cases, than fencing off a park. Regulation matters hugely.
Fascinating insights. Species as umbrellas, communities as partners, and policy as a critical tool.
That seems to capture it well.
Okay, so let's leave our listeners with a final thought to chew on. Something for the future. If these conservation projects continue to succeed, and many are showing population increases for tigers, rhinos, elephants, that very success creates its own challenge, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. More animals often means more potential for conflict with humans, especially as human populations also grow and expand.
So the provocative question is this. How does India take the successful models we've discussed, things like managing elephant corridors effectively, or the participatory approaches used for snow leopards, and scale them up? How do you prepare for and manage the next wave of human-wildlife conflict that conservation success itself will inevitably generate?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Adapting to success might be the next great conservation challenge.
Something to definitely think about. That's all for this deep dive. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for watching. Follow us on Telegram and Instagram. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.